Bill Holloway. I live here in Alameda, in California. I drive a very rare car. There's only a handful on lease here in Northern California. I didn't want a plain electric car. Most electric cars can't make my daily commute, which is 150 miles round trip. The economy in this Mercedes is great. I average 58 miles per kilogram of hydrogen, which is the same as 58 miles per gallon in gas.
Holloway drives a fuel cell vehicle. It uses hydrogen instead of gasoline for fuel, and it emits only water vapor instead of harmful pollution.
I picked a hydrogen car because I was able to drive one of the early experimental models, and I'm kind of a geek.
Car makers have spent more than a decade and invested billions of dollars to develop the technology.
Having been involved in this now for 15 years and seeing the evolution of the technology, these guys are serious. They really see the fuel cell vehicle as the future of automotive technology, and you will see that in the commercial products that come out.
In 2014, Hyundai will release a new fuel cell SUV in California, followed by new models from Toyota and Honda in 2015. But even with the rollout of these new hydrogen cars, drivers may hit a roadblock when it's time to refuel.
My biggest complaint about this fuel cell car, and fuel cell cars in general, is there's nowhere to fill them up.
For now, there's just one place he can go to refuel his car in Northern California, at this station in Emeryville, owned and operated by AC Transit. 12 of its public buses run on hydrogen. At the hydrogen pump, filling up is remarkably similar to filling up at a regular gas station.
It only takes 4 or 5 minutes to fill, the same as filling up a regular gasoline car, so I had to make no adjustments at all.
On a per-mile basis, hydrogen costs about as much as gasoline. And like gasoline, hydrogen is flammable. But it disperses quickly if it leaks because it is lighter than air.
I never worried about the safety of the hydrogen. The hydrogen tanks are buried in the middle, in the safest place in the car.
The tanks also store hydrogen at high pressure, a recent innovation that has doubled the driving range of fuel cell cars.
What's very different now than several years ago is that we're able to store a lot more hydrogen on board the vehicle because we've gone to higher storage pressures that are now giving us a driving range of 250 or even 300 miles.
Most battery electric cars can only travel 80 or so miles before needing to be recharged for several hours. A fuel cell car also needs electricity to power its electric motor. But here, the electricity is made on board from hydrogen inside a fuel cell stack.
Here is a fuel cell stack that's very similar to the type that you'd see in a fuel cell powered car. Each cell has a special membrane material in the middle that splits the hydrogen molecules into protons and electrons. The protons are now charged particles called ions that can go through this membrane material, but the electrons cannot.
So the electrons go around the membrane and generate electricity. Oxygen from the air also flows in and binds with the electrons and ions to produce water and heat, the only tailpipe emissions. Like plug-in Toyota Priuses and battery electric Nissan Leafs, fuel cell cars are called zero-emission vehicles since they emit no pollutants or carbon dioxide.
Hydrogen fuel cell vehicles can be zero-emission vehicles, but the only way you can do that is to use a renewable source for the hydrogen, and that could be solar power or wind power.
Still, most hydrogen generated in the U.S. is made with methane, a natural gas.
Even though there's some CO2 produced from that process, it's still about 50% less than burning gasoline in a combustion engine.
In October 2013, California, Oregon, and 6 other states pledged to put more than 3 million zero-emission vehicles on their roads by 2025. With the nation's largest car market and its tough air quality standards, California is critical to the success of fuel cell cars and the infrastructure the cars require to take off.
I can't go on a long trip. If they had more fueling stations, they would have more cars they could sell. If there were more cars, they would have more fueling stations. We have a chicken and egg problem.
So in 2013, Governor Jerry Brown signed a new law that provides $20 million a year to build at least 100 hydrogen refueling stations in California by 2024. 19 new stations are already in development.
The state funding helps offset the risk to these small and medium-sized businesses to make this investment to move forward with hydrogen fuel technology.
Still, some question the use of public dollars to help build hydrogen stations.
The state wants to build hydrogen fueling infrastructure with no knowledge as to whether there's going to be a significant number of vehicles that will use those. It's a recipe for risking taxpayer funds for what may be a total waste of money.
And this isn't the first time California has tried to promote a vision of a hydrogen highway.
All across our highway system, hundreds of hydrogen fueling stations will be built.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's plan relied on private investors to help build up to 100 hydrogen stations by 2010. But the plan failed.
I think the original plan timing was ambitious, and I think that the cars really have come so far since the 2004 plan was established.
Even so, will drivers choose hydrogen when electric cars and other clean vehicles are already on the road?
A few quick things about the car before we get in and let you drive. When people get to test drive these cars, they'll be very impressed by the performance, by how similar they are to conventional vehicles. See inside, it looks just like a regular car with a gas pedal and a brake. There's an emergency brake if you need it.
I was promised flying cars when I was a kid. This is as close as it's going to get. This actually stands a chance of being the car of the future, the fuel cell cars.